me call this March meeting of the Monroe County Redevelopment Commission to order, March 22nd, 2023. Jeff, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Martin.
Present.
Commissioner McCarty.
Here.
Commissioner Cassidy.
Here.
Commissioner Kiesling. Commissioner Tucker, he's not here, so 4 members present.
Okay, that's what we need. All right. We have as guest Lisa, who is virtual, Jeff, who's our counsel, Greg Garatas, who's with SSG, who's going to be the primary speaker and target of our questions, and Jen with BEDC. All right, Jeff, why don't I let you kick off this annual report presentation. You might tell everybody why we have to do this.
Well, we have to do this for a variety of reasons. The have to has probably got a lot to do with the state code indicating that in April we have to forward this to the county council, and it has to be put into the gateway system that the state of Indiana runs, so that every RDC across the state has to have their annual reports in. These are to describe what's going on in our TIF districts, where we're at, and give that foundation. Also, in addition, we sent notice to each of the taxing units that we're going to have this meeting, which is it's a statutorily required meeting. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of them came the first couple years where we gave out that notice, and since then they understand that these are recorded on CATs and they can go back and look at the information. So that's why we're having these meetings. As far as statutorily, I also think that, I've been handling this for well over a decade. I also think this is the meeting where the most information about what's going on in the TIF districts are distributed. So I think it's always been a really good meeting to learn where we're at financially, and then have Lisa, when questions are asked, indicate, well, what projects are coming up and things like that.
Okay. Do we have any preferred order in which we want to do these?
Oh, the packets, the paper packets have them in order of Curry, Fullerton, State Road 46, and then ending with the West Side TIF.
So we go small to large.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I've got it large to small. That's how I do it.
All right. And with us today, as I mentioned on the introductions, is Greg Garatas. He's with FSG Corporation, which prepares these reports for us and provides us with advice on bonding and finance, and has for many years now. So he is familiar with us, and we are familiar with him. And Greg, let me turn it over to you.
Well, before he starts, I just want to note that Brad Tucker is an attendee. He just sent me a message. So.
Oh, he is here now. Okay.
Super. Okay, well, good evening or afternoon. It's not quite evening yet. And Lisa, you're going to have to help me out. You've got my wing, right, for the capital improvements. And then Jeff, there may be some trick questions that Martin has for us, on some of the updates. So I'm going to need your help. So Greg Garatas with Financial Solutions Group. So thank you for having me, and enjoy coming down and walking you through these reports in a summary format. So I'm going to start with the Curry Profile TIF District, and stop me at any point in time if you'd like to ask a question or anything like that. I can stop pretty easy. So the summary of the report is kind of put together on page 1 in the letter, and it does serve several purposes. We've got to file it with not only the state of Indiana, the DLGF, and I always do the acronyms, but then define those. It's the Department of Local Government Finance, and so we'll upload this along with the parcels. A lot of people will say, well, why do you include all the parcel by parcel analysis? Well, my redevelopment commission sometimes like to see who's in the district, but also it's required information to send to DLGF. And so it also then is submitted to the county council, and so they mainly have to take note that they received it. So if we go to, I like to go to the findings, and on page 4, and to kind of refresh your memory on this one, this is where we have an outstanding bond of 6.175, and I'll show you that here in a minute, 6,175,000 that was issued in 2018. So it is on number 3. This is kind of one of the updates. It is our understanding the developer Cook Group currently owns the bonds and still owns the bonds. And the bonds have a maturity of February 1, 2029. I'd like to remind all my redevelopment commission,
Question, Greg.
39,
Thank you.
all the commissions, that keep in mind, since this is a developer purchase bond, that there is no risk to the county on these bonds. So please keep that in mind. And you see in number 2, personal property was corrected, and that's really occurred in 2021. Keep in mind, this report is really kind of concentrating on what happened in 2022. That's what the Department of Local Government wants to know. And then we put forth a little bit of summary in the future. So next page, page 5, is the tax rate. And like every RDC that I've seen so far this year, the tax rate has dropped in payable 2023. So a lot of times, as the commission's president will remember, when we come up with projections, we do not increase or decrease the tax rate. Why? Because sometimes it will go down, and it did go down. So we like to hold it level.
What's the creation of the decrease in the
That
tax
what
rate?
this did was the extraordinary increase in the assessed valuation as a result of the market and the home values and the different values of property. Keep in mind, valuations of your homes should have went up, and also did commercial property. And so the assessed value grew higher than what is called the maximum levy growth quotient, which was 5% for 2023. And so we had AV growing at a higher rate than 5%, which drove down the tax rate.
Which essentially means we capped out.
No, not capped out, but so if you have a property tax levy that's allowed to go up 5% by it's a non-farm payroll rolling 60-month average.
Okay.
What does that have to do with property tax levy? Nothing, but that's what it's pegged to.
That's how it
That is redone each and every year, and that's 5% for budget year 2023. When you have AV, let's say of 10%, then you take the levy, divide it by the AV. What happens is tax rate goes down. If you have AV in 1 year where it's 4%, tax growth quotient is 5%, then you would have a tax rate increase. Okay? And so that's what really drives it.
Does anyone ever budget down below the 5% maximum?
They used to, and in Senate Bill 1, about 15 years ago, they were calling it bank levy, and people were doing that. And then the state of Indiana came in November and whacked it down and took it away from the units of government. So a lot of units of government have a bad taste in their mouth from that and lost their extra levy. So therefore, it didn't help. Trying to be a good steward didn't caught up with them. And because they had an intention to use it later. So good question, but yeah. So
Best to play with the money you've got, not the money you think you might get.
exactly.
That's right.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, page 6 is the debt amortization schedule for the 2018 bonds. So we do have some amortization or some interest coming up in 2024. but we also forgave that interest all in early years. That's what we do with developer purchase bonds, right? Because when they basically are issuing this bond, they're taking their money and they're basically using the property tax to pay back their own debt. Well, it'd be stupid to kind of raise the debt. So we work this out when we do the bond issue. So this was all worked out in 18.
Yeah, we work that out so that it's a matter of whenever the time frame comes that the principal amount will be due. We won't,
Yes,
okay, but we're still, yeah. It's still capped and owned by the developer.
right. And my legal counsel can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the event there is not sufficient revenue, and I'm on page 7 now, if there's not sufficient revenue that comes in, and actually maybe we'll go to 8, then what happens is basically the debt is forgiven.
Correct.
Okay, so,
I have a note there that it's, the revenue is unlikely to be sufficient to cover the annual debt for at least several years to come. And this, you have to remember that we initiated this project before COVID, when Cook was on a real growth spurt. And COVID hit and their world changed dramatically. And so we haven't seen the development there that we had expected to see over the course of the next few years.
so Martin, did that feel kind of like deja vu? Because that also hit us on State Road 46.
Oh, it hit everybody everywhere. There is they did get the distribution of the funds, and they did start to work on the property there. I'd be interested at some point to see how they actually spent the bond money, because there were, in the presentations, there were certain projects they were going to do. Some of them are obviously done. Others are not, and I'd like to kind of know what happened to the bond money. Are they holding some for future, et cetera?
They actually, I believe this is the one they actually are holding. They have not drawn down a significant amount, I believe, Jeff, that we had indicated. And I think we'll see that on one of these pages coming
Page
up.
10?
But it's actually on page, well, that's the assessed valuation.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in here that indicated how much they had.
No, we have that somewhere, but I don't have it in this report.
So it's
we can
quite,
get
it's
that.
quite possible that
Yep.
we may be able to pay whatever, so when they don't draw at all, does the repayment schedule change?
Yes.
So this schedule would have to be modified based upon what they've actually drawn.
Correct.
How do you adjust the principal based upon what they've drawn? I mean, the interest rate's gonna be fixed, but how do we adjust the principal?
Well, the interest rate is fixed, but the interest on the principal is not fixed.
Right, so the question is.
So then that's where the trustee bank gets involved. Okay? And that's Old National, correct, Jeff?
Correct.
And so Old National is our trustee bank, and that's where the calculations have to be updated.
Okay, so we should expect a bill from Old National at some point this year for a principal and interest payment on this bond, which will be calculated based upon the actual amount that was drawn on the bond. Is that correct?
I don't think that is correct. I don't think we get a bill for the principal and interest during, there's a, let me go back to page.
I thought this was gonna be the easy one.
Well, I think it has to do with, we had a 5-year period where they were going to spend the funds, and that's why we aren't.
With no interest.
With no interest. They were going to spend the money in that 5-year period.
Right.
And that's when the payments would begin after that 5-year period. So I don't expect a bill this year, but I think it's 2024.
Right, it's right here, it's coming up on 2/1 of 2024.
24, okay,
So that will be the one that may be minimized.
right, okay.
But it'll be a minimum outgo in regards to what
Yeah.
what our capital expenses.
So we are required by the documents to send the money to the trustee, I believe, John,
Okay.
subject to check. And then the trustee will do the calculations based upon what's been drawn down and utilize that money. And then in the past, they've paid, I believe they've returned that after the payment. But we can double check the document. I didn't reread the 2018 bond ordinance
Yeah,
before
our
I came.
history has never had that happen.
Yeah,
We never had that problem before.
yeah.
Okay, but I just kind of wanted to
But-
know. And I think it would be good to make contact with them to figure out what they've done, what they still plan on doing. I mean, it's a really important area for us and understanding, because we are supporting that area also with the west side activities, so it'd be nice to know what's gonna go on there.
And I don't know, Lisa, you don't have a comment on have you been out there at all?
No, I haven't seen much going on out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Colin, did you have a question?
No, I did not, no, that's fine.
And actually, they just had some, I think they're still going through some planning items. They were on the agenda last night.
Okay, so if we change, turn then to, I think I kind of hit page 8, 9, 10, we are projecting now some AV to hit 2023, payable 2023, so we will get some revenue, and then we'll get more revenue on the projected basis for 2024. Obviously, again, at this point in time, it's not expected to be in excess of. But you can see on Appendix A how the AV is developing, and so, you know, it's taken a little while, but remember, there's also tax abatement. And so that's
Yes.
rolling off and bringing it on.
Right,
So that's on Appendix A.
right, okay.
And then the map is in there, and you guys got a better color map, and so does, and Jeff has a better one. But this is the one so we can upload. Okay, any further questions?
Yeah, just a quick question in regards to the map when we look at this. Is this an area, Richard, or that would ever be expanded accordingly, or will be fixed in our timeframe we're dealing with?
It is, for all practical purposes, gonna be fixed because the west side TIF surrounds it, and the part to the south is a residential area.
Okay.
Because this is the one we
And-
actually
and
carved
it's-
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Okay,
got
so
some
it's a
city,
static TIF that-
there's some city areas next to it, and I don't know whether the city annexation proposal
That's,
included parts of this that are not already in the TIF. They did include some areas that were in the TIF.
how, just, and I don't want to dwell off into anything,
Yep.
but how does that work in an annexation area if it's in a TIF area? Are we still,
But the annexation, how it works and we have, when we get to the west side, we have an example of how it works but essentially, as long as there is debt, and in the west side area, whenever we do a TIF bond, we always go to the city council and have them approve it as well. So it's still, so we still would collect their tax rate, or collect the base rate on the taxes for that. If we had no bonds, then it gets moved over and out of the TIF district. But as long as there's debt to be paid, it remains within the TIF.
until such time as the debt is repaid or the bond is paid off?
And I think technically it's the debt that was there on the day it was annexed, unless the other governing body approves or it basically accepts it as part of the West Side TIF and allows that action to continue. So that's why we always take those to the city council when we go forward.
And
So,
that-
well, and to hop along on that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but especially when we look at Curry, is this area considered part of the area when it comes to the city that they have held off on and payment in lieu of annexation?
I think the Cook properties are. I think there
Yes.
are portions of the West Side TIF district that are are part of what
think
was
this is-
in the annexation plan. I can't remember which area they were in. Whether it was, I thought it was one of the 1A or 1Bs, which are, again, they're all in one form of litigation or another. There are
Yeah.
two that are in basically part of two different cases, and the rest of them are all part of one.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Long story short, we don't have to worry about not having the funds to take care of it.
It shouldn't
Correct.
affect the revenue
Okay.
of this group.
Yeah, so we would be held harmless.
That works, thank you.
Great.
Okay, so do we move to Fullerton Pike?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Fullerton Pike. Okay, if we go to the update on page 2, or the comments section, the more recent comment is 2 parcels with previous assessed valuation. I'm on number 6, totaling $1,432,000 became tax exempt for taxes payable in 2022. So
Hey,
that's
Greg, where you
really,
at, Greg? Catching up here.
pardon me?
Give me a page.
Okay. Oh, page 2.
Thank you.
Yep.
It should be in there, right?
It is.
wasn't in the
I'm
right
good.
order.
I just wanted to clarify as we move
Yeah.
forward, so I didn't get lost.
And that's page 2, number 6 comment. That was the more recent comment. Again, on page 3, we have a declining tax rate. Tax rate's a little different, obviously, because this is Perry Township now,
Okay.
than what you saw earlier.
What's the aspect of Perry Township? Just because of the additional growth, or
What is the what?
when you say it went down, decreased?
Oh,
Because
again,
of
yes,
Perry
again,
Township.
the same growth in the AV.
Growth in the AV
Yep.
created that. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And you can see, you can look there, we put the detail, if it was the township or the school, and mainly what we're seeing is, you can tell it's growth in AV, because generally, all the rates went down on page 3. Okay? Okay,
So, when it goes down in that respect and it shows the growth, that means the area that we're actually growing in our community that may require additional infrastructure costs
no, it's growth outside the TIF area.
outside the TIF.
Yes. So
What,
it's
for
outside the TIF
for
area
schools?
because remember, the tax rate that is charged in the TIF area and outside the TIF area are the same.
Okay.
They're exactly the same. But what's really, the budgets are based upon all the township, all the school, corporation, it's exclusive of the AV in the TIF district. They calculate the tax rate outside of the TIF district, and that same tax rate is applied inside the TIF district. So what this is saying is, because we're going to isolate the AV in the TIF district, what this is saying is the AV outside the TIF district grew proportionally higher than the 5%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, makes sense.
So on page 4 now, we have, and Lisa can explain if you don't, you know where the Fullerton Pike TIF district is, there's a map. But what we're doing on page 4 is we've been accumulating our funds, and actually page 4, and you should go to page 5 for the most recent, we were accumulating our funds and spending them as we go. And Lisa, I see that we spent a little bit in 2022, so it's kind of stalled out a little bit. What, do you have an update?
So the last I think I talked to Jeff is we were going to, if I remember right, Jeff, we're going to bond with our major bridge fund as our backup for this Fullerton Pike project. Since the Fullerton Pike project went down after the hospital, that was my recollection, after we got these costs, the more recent costs in for the project. Does that make sense?
I think that is correct. I think what we were talking about is, I thought you had two major bridge projects.
I
And that
do.
we were contemplating doing a bond for both those projects where the Fullerton Pike revenue was going to be pledged towards the Fullerton Pike part of that bond. And then the major bridge was going to be for all of it. And then there was a discussion of should we prioritize major bridge as being the first payer of that bond, or, and have Fullerton Pike be the backup, or vice versa.
Definitely, probably the Hume Bridge
The
first.
Yes.
Fullerton Bridge is really expensive, so.
Well, if you go back to, I'll shuffle you a little bit, but if you go back to Appendix C, you will see that the total cost was approximately 14.1 million in 2024. And Lisa, you're saying possibly that's come down some, but,
So with inflation,
yeah.
I'm gonna say that is, yeah, that's, the way, we just did a project February 15th, not this project. It was actually a bridge and a road, and it was unawardable due to inflation cost.
Okay.
So this project right now is scheduled to go to letting, the middle of July. I do believe with, the way a new permitting process is in place with DNR, that we're gonna have to move this to a letting of probably August, September, which it doesn't change, our fiscal year funding, which, the federal funding to this is very minimal because it's ran through the MPO. So it's only like 2.7 million because MPO funding, there's just not very much there. Again, with the inflation, it's just hard to say where this is gonna come in, bid-wise, but it's more locally funded than it is anything. So it's gonna be up to us whether or not, we award it or not, because it's gonna be more on a local decision than it is anything.
So keep in mind, when we put this together, we knew the very large projects were out there. And we said, if anything, and by the way, Cume Bridge, major Cume Bridge did not exist here in Monroe County when we did this. So this was an option to help assist. And so then we got Cume Bridge established, major Cume Bridge established here in Monroe County. And so we saw this as both a supplement to a very large project, along with other resources would be needed and determined at the time.
And if you need any balances or, I have those numbers in front of me. If you need any from major bridge balances, I have those numbers. I can send those numbers to anybody.
Well, as you can see on page 5, we have about 660,000 in the bank, which is basically a small down payment.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket.
Are you talking your 660, that's your Fullerton Pike?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so that doesn't play what I have in major bridge, which is an 1171 fund.
Yes, they're different funds.
Right.
Yes, they are different funds.
And the hope is that major bridge has a whole lot more than.
Major bridge has a whole lot more than $660,000.
Yeah. Otherwise, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Call us before you get too late. Okay, so if we go on to the parcel analysis, then on page 7, you will see how the AV has grown, but also keep in mind when we established this, everything out there was taxable back in 2016. I'm on page 7. And so, as you can see, we've kind of declined. We took the major hit in 18, and we kind of knew that could happen because we and Jeff and I had talked about this quite a bit because we've seen other hospitals go tax exempt. So we kind of expected it. Okay. So all in all, we're basically getting the revenue in, depositing it, and putting it where it belongs, which is in that fund. So,
But we don't expect significant growth in that particular.
not at this point. I'm
in
not
that
aware of
area.
anything going.
No, it's not one of our, if you look at the map, it's even not one of our larger TIFs. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of room even for growth, even if we,
The only thing you do expand the TIF at all possible, but the dollar amount that's gonna come in to take care of the capital projects that obviously we're gonna have with the bridge and the extension of Aurora Road.
no, I think
We're
there,
not counting on the redevelopment and the Fullerton TIF to carry the.
We never have.
no, we've always been concerned, I mean, one of the reasons we've never issued a bond in this district is because we were always concerned about the instability of the revenue source.
Right. And we're not gonna see anything happen here until that Aurora Road extension is completed. I mean, the traffic kind of dead ends here into Rockport, and it can't support heavy traffic, so you're not gonna see it. When that extension gets done and we connect up all the way across the bottom of the county, then we will start to see more development interest in this area.
Some additional develop, increased valuations accordingly, and
Yeah.
what is our sunsetting time on this TIF?
This was done in,
16, so it probably has about a 25-year life.
Yeah.
But we actually, the audit,
I don't think this started this started in 2008.
oh, 8,
Yeah.
and we never had a debt issuance on it.
So no, I think I think it was either a 25 or a 30-year TIF.
yeah,
I can't recall which off the top of my head, so,
So if it's 20, we've got 5 years left, if it's 25,
no, I think it's either 25 or 30.
25 or 30.
So we're probably year
Halfway there.
15, so we probably have 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
yeah.
So if we're looking at something as, assisting from capturing any additional assessed value for road improvements or improvements in that particular area infrastructure-wise, we've got to get this bridge, road in, and then look at the captured AV and what other infrastructures can be done.
Yeah, and if we'd ever float a bond, on the bond, you always use, like, the primary source would be the most stable source, and then you say other secondary revenues as available, and we would feed in the TIF first.
Okay.
And then make the requirement on the primary source less
So-
by that.
And any bonding that we would do would be based on what initial proven revenue streams are.
No, it would be based upon the proven other source that we would be using, which would be like the major
Cume
Cume.
Bridge.
Yes, and this would always be a supplement, so there is no risk of default.
Okay, so our revenue streams, we don't have to worry about getting to that point.
Absolutely.
In this group.
Absolutely. No way would we just tell them, if we have dollars, we'll give it to you from here. If we don't, we won't, but don't
Yeah.
assess your risk on that.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
So Jeff,
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what do we look at for a timeline for bonding, if we have a project going to letting?
I think you would probably want 4 months.
Yeah.
Before, after, or during letting?
So the way I look at it is normally you, before you can sign the contract, you must have money in the bank.
Okay,
Okay? You can bid and hold the bids for usually bids are 90 days or whatever. But if you're only holding the bids for 30 because of the risk in today's market, then you'd want to take that into account. But you got to, before you can sign the, correct?
Yep.
Before you can sign the bids to proceed, the notice to proceed, you must have money in the bank.
okay, I'm pretty confident, after last week's conversation, we're gonna move the letting to August, September, but I'll confirm that. So we'll probably wanna get moving on that, because I'm sure the bonds or the bids at this day and age right now, the bids are only being held for about 30 days due to inflation.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we could time it so that we could have most of the approvals done prior to the bid, and if it became an unawardable, then we just wouldn't complete the process, is that?
Absolutely.
So we'll work with Greg on the time, and I guess my question, and maybe this is a question to have tomorrow, is the non-TIF bridge project, where are we at with that one? And do we want to do that in one bond or two bond? I think that's where we're kind of at.
Okay, so, and yeah, and if you guys want to talk about this tomorrow, I know you have a lot to discuss. The other one, I'm going to say we'll probably not go to a letting at this point. I'm going to say the fall of 2024.
So we may
Because we
want
would not want to go to letting on that in the spring typically, so you usually want to do a fall letting, so we can talk tomorrow if you want.
Yeah, and just slightly backing up on the first one, and we can do this as a Teams meeting and not take up the whole redevelopment, but
Yeah.
but the whole the point on the first one is, Lisa, if you had alternates, that would be important, or you could also do, rather than throw out the entire bid, you could also do a limited notice to proceed. And sometimes we've done that. So keep those tools in mind, and we can define those more specifically for you as you move ahead.
Okay.
So, okay. Next one, State Road 46. Is that up next?
Yep.
Okay. So, State Road 46, this is the one, and I'm going to page 5. And, you know, this was one that really got caught by basically the market back in '08 and all that, and it slowed down. Again, there is a, let's see here. There is a developer, I should go back to page 3. There's two financings. There was the original financing that we did in '05 for not to exceed $7 million. That has been paid off and was taken off the books and basically canceled. And then we came in and did the 2021 financing. Okay, and that was for $4.5 million. And this is the one, I incorrectly spoke on the other one. I didn't have as a note, but I do have here. As of March 13, 2023, the developer has only drawn $61,000 of the total amount. That was some of the cost of issuance and that. So right now they have the authority, again, this is a bond that the developer owns, no risk to Monroe County, okay? And we have only $61,500 drawn down. Now, I don't know what has taken place as far as construction. Do you know, Lisa?
Nothing.
they
Well,
are
and you guys are
currently,
probably thinking I'm nuts. This is the one that was on the Plan Commission last night that I said a while ago. So yeah, they're moving. So I know that North Park Development was on Plan Commission last night. Jeff might have talked to planning today.
It was approved to the commissioners last night to move forward to the commission.
and it still needs, I think it still needs to go to the county commissioners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was approved last night, and we had met with, I think Richard was at all those meetings. We had met with them several times last fall and winter, or late 2022, and we're working on the design, and so I think the expectation was that it was going to go through planning at this point, with hopefully construction starting this year yet. Is that?
Yep. That's what the plan is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And with that gives us, we've already got the money in the bank, it's there, it'll be drawn down as the projects move forward.
The developer has the money in the bank.
He has the money.
And can draw it down and use it, yes.
As needed to do the construction.
Correct.
complete.
And then as that happens, the drawdowns, then the principal repayment will start reaching up to 4.5 and maybe less. cannot exceed.
Yeah, that's our max cap. It's already backed by the developer. And then when we're looking at, is that an issuance where from a cash flow standpoint, we don't have to worry about it, but do we have any incremental years that we'll hold off on the principal aspect of it?
Well, we'll go there here in a minute, but let me send you to page 5, because there's another reason why we don't ever project higher tax rates. And let me give you the second reason. The second reason is on number 5, page 5. Okay, so that's easy, 5 for 5. The Bloomington Township dissolved the fire territory and joined the fire district. Well, fire district rates are outside of the TIF district.
That's right.
So this conversion, basically, if you go to page 6 now, this conversion, you will see what happens is the territory rate doesn't show up, but the fire district rate does show up, but you're going to find where we've done the calculations, we don't use the 27.87 pennies for 2023 because it's not captured by, there's actually a sentence in the statute that says that, and I'm actually trying to get fire territories on the same level as fire district.
Right.
You ought to both get it.
And now is that from a state legislative
Yes.
standpoint that you're looking for?
That was state legislation almost 10 years ago.
Right.
So if that equaled out, then that would take care of this issue where you've got the imbalance?
Well, it didn't equal out. So it basically meant that the tax rate will be lower going forward, okay? And will not bring in as much revenue. So, and then we had growth on top of it, okay? So we got a double whammy, okay? But the good news, again, we do not back these bonds.
Sure.
So there's lots of reasons why we do developer-backed bonds and not open market. Okay?
Does that, since we're doing public infrastructure in that, based upon that criteria in regards to using, our backing as with our community as a whole, does that increase or decrease the overall rate?
So you're going to find in the west side, we have backed all of those bonds. It has substantially reduced the interest rate.
Okay.
What we've always had to show council and the commissioners that it is very, very unlikely, and we showed that here many years at the Redevelopment Commission, specifically with the GE parcel. And so what we always showed is that there was little to no risk of ever calling on basically Granddad for his credit, okay? Granddad being the whole entire county other than the already TIFed areas, the redevelopment areas. So it's very, very important, and that's how we've done the west side, and there's a huge benefit to the guarantee.
To the guarantee as a community as a whole versus the developer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So now on page 7, this is the bond issue, and we did not have a forgiveness period on this because this was a already developed TIF district. We had started it before we issued the bonds. And so the best thing now to probably look at is really, let's look at page 8, which shows our basically cash in the bank, but it also shows that in 2022, our TIF settlement was approximately 530. So there are things happening out there that are increasing the assessed valuation, and we're going to see that here in a minute. So we believe and believed at the time we issued the 2021 bonds, we could probably support that level. Okay? And so it's looking really good, and as you can see, our disbursements, our claims, have been pretty small because, again, there's really been no interest because there's not really been any drawdown of the principal. So that goes back to what we talked about on the very first one, right?
So once we issue it, we're not accumulating anything until it's a drawdown situation from a trustee.
We're not accumulating any
Interest,
interest
right.
expense, so to
It's-
speak.
It's sitting there in
Yeah.
the trustee.
Right.
As it's drawn down, that's when our interest rate.
And one thing very, very important there is, you know, if you don't draw down the principal, we don't pay the principal. If you don't draw down the principal, we don't pay more interest. And second of all, due to basically a ruling in Jackson County versus Hendricks County, Jackson County Bank versus Hendricks County, you don't pay interest on interest. So in the event you don't pay interest, there's not accumulating interest on the interest.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's good too. Again, all protecting what I call taxpayer money.
Yeah.
So, what we have then is, as you can see, let's go to some of the positive improvements that have been occurring. On page 15, we had some development, and I had asked, on page 15, the real estate Bloomington, is that apartments, Jeff, or I asked,
The Trilogy?
yeah, Trilogy.
No,
I
that's
asked
a
rehab.
rehab
Oh,
facility.
yeah. that's-
Okay, so that had a nice increase in assessed valuation.
Now, does the abatement kick in against that from an assessed value, or is that just an incremental draw?
So I don't know if there was abatement on that
Is
facility.
that the Ernest
I don't
Health?
remember.
I don't know.
That one I don't know off the top of my head. if
There
it
was on
has-
the other, right? The
The rehab.
Yeah, the Ernest Health
Ernest Health, right?
facility, and I don't think that's what the name's on the building, but
Right.
it's just lintel, just kind of,
Generic.
Yeah.
but
Okay, so
it
that-
did get an
I
abatement.
apologize, that's the senior living.
Yes.
Thank you. I apologize, I had the wrong one. So that was Ernest Health I was thinking of.
Yes.
So
Which is not
page,
hit on our AV yet.
I think it might be the ENJ investments, but I don't
Which
know
one?
that for certain. I'd have to
Oh.
pull up a map and put in the parcels.
Okay.
so page 16
Can I,
then.
hang on a
Yes.
second? On page 14 for 2022,
Okay.
there's $1 million negative for West River LLC. Do you know what parcel that is?
I do not, sir. We've got the parcel number, but, no.
Yeah.
But for some reason, did we take a piece out or something, Jeff?
I don't think so.
Or is this a property transfer, so they're gone and the other one got picked up?
See,
and-
that's what I'm wondering, yeah.
But I didn't think that West River LLC actually, I thought that that was a Logan Land Development parcel.
We'd have to find it out for you.
Yep, I'll have to go look. Let me go. Let me check this. I'd like to know who that is. Because it could be one that's not even in that area. It could be someplace else.
So going to page 16,
Okay.
we are at now, as you saw earlier, remember I had about a $1.22 tax rate, and I told you it went, so we exclude the fire district, and so we get about a 98-cent tax rate. That's a really, really low tax rate. You know, when it's on a net basis, even the $1.26 is a low tax rate by all standards. So you can see that there may be somewhat of a decrease in revenue because the 98 cents and because, you know, we are getting more AV, we project at 26 million, but, you know, it may not, again, now as a result of the switch in the fire district rate, it may not be enough. Okay, and so again, there's, you know, stay tuned.
It almost cuts it in half.
Yes, it did cut it, it brought it down a lot. And we did notice, I believe in the 500, I asked the question, there was a little lag in some of the payments that lagged over and made that number a little higher than it should have been.
Right.
Because we asked that question, so. So ultimately, then you see the parcels behind it and the map. And so, you know, again, we do these having our eyes wide open and making sure that we cover everything before we get too far. And then I would go back to the exhibit that has the construction on it. Lisa, it's Appendix C. This is the infrastructure improvements that were estimated on March 8th of 2022, and I think is still what we're striving for, correct? To get done.
Let me look at Appendix C.
Yeah, the Curry Pike.
Is that the extension of Curry Pike?
Yes.
Yeah, that is what we are still looking at.
Now, when we say the construction of Curry Pike, is that what we just finished?
No, I think that's Curry Pike extending it along Hunter Valley to Arlington.
Arlington,
Yeah,
correct.
so that's end of Curry Park to Arlington, also known as Hunter Valley Road.
Okay, thank you.
So it's quite
There was quite the
possible,
discussion
that-
last evening.
so it's quite possible we're not gonna have enough coming in to cover this,
It's possible.
unless we get some more development out there.
Yeah, I did notice that on the, you know, probably in the 23, page 24, it's probably going to go up some more still.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't have those numbers yet, but, you know,
Well, I know that the one property, it does have a tax abatement on it, so that would.
yeah, roll off.
Right, that'll be going.
That will.
But this has an impact on our thought about splitting off a residential TIF and being very careful about which properties we would split off, because we don't want to split off high AV properties from this. We're going to need them.
Need to combine.
Right, but residential would not be collected as part of this,
Right.
so,
Yeah, it won't
currently.
go-
Well, and I guess in my mind, the high TIF increment AV parcels, right? So if
Yes,
it's a
high TIF AV.
if it's a high AV parcel because of where it's at and the size and stuff, and
Stays.
it's basically neutralized every year, so it doesn't have a lot of increment with it, then that's a different story than a
Yeah,
high one with a building on it.
exactly.
Right. Right.
Exactly. See, so, yeah, you just want to be careful.
Yeah, quick question as we look through this infrastructure aspect. There was just a comment in regards to this. It says the funding, future project blend federal funds with other local funds. I mean, my understanding, Lisa, is there's not really going to be federal funds involved in the Hunter Valley aspect.
No.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
This entire TIF, I believe, is within the MPO jurisdiction. So there would be a possibility, we could apply, but there's a huge backlog of people wanting to apply for that money.
There's that, we just now submitted projects for the 2020, out to the 2028, and it's already financially constrained, shows constraint because all the projects, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Any more questions? If not, we'll move to the west side.
I think we're good on this. I don't think I had any more anywhere. And I just have that one I've got to look up. Okay.
So keep in mind, on the west side, we have accumulated and kept building so that we have a historical, because we've got a really good story out there. And former Commissioner Harris will remember Kurt White.
But really,
You remember Kurt?
I just saw him on TV and he was really good.
Yeah, and so he was out there on a video when this was kind of originally
That's
started.
right. That's
Him and Bill.
Bill Williams.
Bill Williams. And so there is a video out there where they're standing in the middle of the field, and I still think it's a great one that we ought to play every once in a while, which they talked about what all they wanted to do out here. And it was a pretty vacant area at that point in time. And so it's really, really cool. And I have a copy somewhere. And because a lot has really occurred, and if we had not had this TIF, this is where the state legislature really needs to take note, because they are trying to write new laws every once in a while. They were trying to do one right now and cut TIF revenue by 20% right off the top and make you give it back. And had we had 20% less here, we would have had a lot less infrastructure. And it's really, so it's one of those, sometimes they have to look at the guys that aren't doing TIFs right. And here in Monroe County, we have done them right, and we've done them right for the whole time. So, and this spells it out. You can see, and I want to really kind of go to the summary of the findings. We've paid off debt early. We've done a whole bunch of things, and it is good for you to kind of read through this. And number 4, this is the one where we had originally I'm on page, Exhibit C. Sorry, this didn't have a page number at the bottom on Exhibit C, but Exhibit C, summary of findings. This is the one where we took General Electric out. We took their building and their personal property, and we said, there wasn't any personal property, and we set it up in that new TIF district that we started with. And so we ensured ourselves as we did that we would still have sufficient revenues to pay our bonds. And so, we really, really have done a good job there. One note on number 6, the county should use Fund 4923 to make the final payment of the 13 bonds on July 15th of 2023 and close this fund. We can get rid of it, and I'll show you that here in a minute, but we'll be able to.
What is Fund 4923?
It's one that is specifically for the 2013 bonds.
It's a debt reserve fund.
Debt reserve? Okay.
Yep.
We've got adequate money to pay off in that way.
Yeah, we're going to show you that here in a few.
Okay.
So that's one specific note, and I wanted to make sure that Jeff and the Redevelopment Commission saw that. Now, on Exhibit D, page 8, the tax rate's a little more complicated, but they did go down. They're a little more complicated because we show you the in-city tax rate at the bottom and the outside the city tax rate at the top. So keep in mind the difference is the city rate, okay? And so then let's step through our debt. Our debt in page 9, we have the 2020 bonds, amazing interest rate of 2%, okay? And this addresses your specific point about being able to have a property tax backup and good times and being frugal with the taxpayers' dollars, okay? You can't beat that. The 2015 bonds were a little higher. It was a little higher time period, but it was 4% and 4.25, and actually that's low in today's market too. They'll be a little higher than that right now. I'm on page 10.
And what kind of rates are you looking at as I know we aren't going to issue anything at the present moment, but given our...
We're not, the Redevelopment Commission's not, but there is, the 1520 is running around 4.5 right now, 4 to 4.5. It's up.
It's up
quite a bit.
substantially with government, even with our government backing.
Yes, yeah. Interest has gone up everywhere. The next one is the 2013 bonds, page 11, and this is the one that we're talking about. We will pay off 7/15 of 2023. So guess what, Martin? We're paying off another bond. You've seen these.
Yeah.
And so
I'd like to keep that at 2%, but
yeah.
Yeah, we can't roll that up.
Nope. Nope.
What's the significance of July paying it off then?
Well, as you
we
can
pay
see,
twice a year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
January,
So
July.
yeah, and interest is usually January and July, and we set them all up so that we keep everything on parity, and the definition of parity is basically on the same level. There's no first lien on the revenue. We give everybody equal lien on all of these. So that's what's meant by parity. And so these were on that, and this is when it's coming due, and so we'll use those funds and pay that off. And by the way, on page 12, this is the infamous debt service coverage calculation that I told you about, that we always tried to maintain greater than 2, and we would take GE in and out and show the 2 different ones. We don't have to do that now, because GE is not in here.
It's in its own.
Yes,
separate.
yes, which really insulated a lot of things, and you know, they're improving the whole property, so. So, we're well above. Now,
Okay,
keep in
hang on,
mind,
I have another thing we
Yep.
have to do. So, we had at our last meeting, talked with the Ellisville Fire Department about funding that improvement, and we agreed that we would do it pending our review of our finances. Seeing that our coverage rate is above 3, have we now met our obligation to look at our funding availability for that project for them? And
I do not believe so. I think you need to look at your project cash flow that I believe is at the end
Okay.
of this packet, and I think that,
all right,
I mean, that's a really good sign, but I think you really need to see that. And I also think when we look at the budget, I believe, I'm not sure that our budget for 4923, I believe we have those funds for disbursement to bank probably budgeted in the main West Side TIF fund, which is 4920. So we'd want to confirm that, and because that would be cash we wouldn't be spending out of 4920, which would help with that analysis.
okay, all right, thank you.
so it is going to get a little more complicated, but yeah, as we go forward. But keep in mind, the coverage calculation is revenue compared to just debt, okay? Not revenue compared to debt plus projects. So what the coverage says is you will pay your bankers first before you do any projects. And that's what, so there's a difference between coverage and bank balance, okay? So let's go start looking at our bank balances. And our first one's going to be 2013, and I'm going to take you all the way back to page 17. And this is where it says the debt service reserve is held by the county in Fund 4923. So I think that should be our answer, Jeff. And so that's where this money is held. And we have a balance right now of 249. And what was the payoff? It was less than that, right?
Oh, it's less than that.
Yep, it was back with principal and interest, it was probably 186. Okay, so that's where we're saying we'll use these funds, clear them out, close the fund, and then have these monies go back to the main fund. Okay, the next one then
Quick
is,
question in regards to that, just to verify in regards to it. We're paying a bond off of 2%. Is that a correct statement?
paying the bond off that is 2% interest,
2%.
yes.
And yet if we have any projects,
Right, it's higher cost
it's
financing.
higher cost.
Right, but you can't roll this one, it's
Into that, yeah.
extinguished and done.
This is a bit like your final mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Where if you were going to refinance, you would go to today's rate.
We've
Yeah.
got a time frame commitment that we have to
Yeah.
honor
Yeah.
in regards to. Okay,
Yep,
that makes sense.
because your banker won't just say, oh, I'll let you add another $1 million onto your mortgage.
Right.
You know, with no
No.
credit approval or anything.
Or
Well,
jacking
I
the
just-
interest rate.
based upon, as you indicated, our cash flow versus our coverage in regards to it, since we have accumulated dollars in there, if there's a project that needs to be done that could be left to be financed at 2%, we're much better than.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we wouldn't pay this off early right now.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But our time commitment is by July.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Page 20 now is what's going on with the funds held for the 2015 bonds. And as you can see there, we've got those funds in a separate fund too. And so these are held at the Old National Bank level. So, then on the next one, which is page 22, is what is held at Old National Bank for the 2020 bonds. Okay? So those are held in a trust estate for those bond payments. okay? And so that's important to know, along with the reserve for each of those. We always had the reserve because that's also an important point when we asked Grandpa for his credit rating, okay? Grandpa said, well, you know, that's really great, but don't ever count on it, okay? And so what we also say is we'll set 1 year's principal and interest aside, like you might in your own mortgage, your little extra money there, so that in the event there was insufficient TIF revenue, that would be the first place we'd go, to the debt service reserve. That gives you time then to go find another way to pay for it.
And I have a question for Lisa on this. Has that project, this is the Profile Parkway extension.
Yes.
Has that project been closed?
No,
But we're getting close, right? This is the one
We're-
we're waiting for a final
we're
bill.
waiting on Kreider.
But we don't
Same.
expect that final bill to be 800,000.
No, absolutely not.
So I
No,
guess-
we're just waiting on some final quantities. That's it. I don't expect it to be very much. I actually had a meeting at Kreider's 2 weeks ago and asked them if I could see Jeff Kreider. And he came out to talk to me, and he promised me again that week. And I told him that I told him that I suspect that these bonds could be closed, or we're going to use these funds for other projects, and that he will not have the opportunity to submit his final bills.
So I guess one thing that I want to, that I think we could utilize this for, this, whatever the balance is, and I need to double check with bond counsel, although I think I said I was going to double check with bond counsel last year on this very same topic, and I did, and he said you could use it for part of the Vernal Pike project, right? Because
And actually you did, and I actually have your email. I kept it.
okay,
I remember it too.
I remember saying that, and I was sure I checked on that, and I was sure the answer was we could use this for the Vernal Pike extension. So whatever balance is
Correct.
here, we can use on that other project.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. You sent that in an email, and I keep those important, I keep all important emails, and I did keep that one.
So page 23 now is the amount of money that's held at the county level. Okay, so I went over the old National Bank trustee funds. Now this is the amount that's held at the county level. And as you can see on page 23, it's the balance as of 3/1/23 was approximately 2.2 million.
And that's cumulative of all the dollars that are in each one of the bond funds accordingly.
No,
No.
That's
No.
separate.
that's separate. The trustee funds are not within this.
Okay, the trustee funds are separate from that. We're gonna use the 186 or out of the 220, that pays the 13 bonds off. Then the rest of the bonds still have dollars in there. And the cumulative additional on the 15, or the bonds for the Curry Pike extension have an $800 and some thousand, or well, more than that, excuse me.
Well, the Curry Pike extension's in a different TIF district.
Right.
Wrong Curry Pike.
Okay.
I'm talking Profile Parkway.
Profile Parkway, yes.
Profile Parkway, I apologize, wrong road. That one has an accumulated money that we anticipate will not be completely drawn down, and then we'll be able to take those additional funds and utilize them to help supplement the increased cost of the crossing on Sunrise.
Correct.
Okay. So, and this is just a cumulative cash amount in our West Side Economic.
Right, so keep in mind, as you can see in the prior, we use then what comes in here and we transfer out. So the best thing, if we want to focus right on that, the best thing to do is to go to that document coming up on page 44, which shows, okay, in 2023, the beginning balance, approximately 2.3, and this is just focusing on Fund 4920. the untrusted funds, you know, held at the county level, and shows your estimated TIF revenue expected for '23, shows the different payments coming out of it, and then shows the ending balance projected for the end of this year. And then we roll into 2024, and this is where the large Vernal Pike Trail and the large Vernal Pike Connector Road comes into play, Lisa, from you on page 44. Okay, and we show that what will happen at that point, and we did bring in the federal funds in here, that it's really dependent on that.
Correct.
So on our connectors, our cost, we're estimating at 12,215.4, Lisa. Of that, that federal funding we've been talking about, that's that 9.85 that'll come off of that.
Correct.
So our actual match will be approximately 2.7, 2.8 million.
And to remind the commission, they asked me to put that federal funding in here. I believe, Martin, you actually directed me to do that. So because we kept using the net number and not seeing the gross number and how that might change. So we were keeping the 9.8 and the 12 in there, so you'd have an apple and an apple. Okay, and if federal funding went down, we could plug it in, or went up, we could plug it in, and we could keep planning. So do you still feel those are pretty good numbers, Lisa, at this point?
There's a kicker here.
Because in the past, I put the net.
No, I mean, I can be perfectly honest with you. So we went to letting on February 15th. We set, it was not awardable. Our engineering estimate was 12.2 million. We set down the cost of the project came in at, the lowest was just under 14 million. It was unawardable. We sat with the consultant yesterday. We came up with about 1.5 million worth of changes that we think we can help lower the cost down to more what the engineer estimate is. We're going back to the drawing board to get those lowered, and then going to rebid it in October. I talked to NDOT. Since we are moving it to a different fiscal year, Kathy assured me that she will still keep us with our federal funding at that 9.854, moving it out to a different fiscal year. So that still stayed as secured funding at this point. So I think that we possibly could get a better bid being a fall letting. When you bid a project in February, everybody is so busy, everybody's got their schedules already done for the summer. And then we bid something in February, they're gonna throw it in just to try and get the project. So we're going to a fall letting where nobody has set up their projects for that next year yet. So it's usually hopeful that you can get a better bid because people are gonna want that project more to fit into that upcoming year of construction season, so.
How long can we hold, do you think federal funds can be held time-wise?
We're not, that's an NDOT call.
Okay.
So moving it into a different fiscal year, so a new fiscal year starts July 1st. So we're not, so since Kathy's already moved it into a new fiscal year, we have until that next May 2024.
Okay.
So we're good there because she's already moved it into a new year for us.
Thank you.
And Lisa, I think that's a really smart move because remember, sometimes I like to say, I can tell you the county I wasn't in this week because I go around so many and I'm back in my car a lot. So what I do see is a lot of people are more successful in the fall bid, but cause community crossings.
Yeah.
If you recall, community crossing comes out twice a year. They announce in fall, but everybody with that fall money moves it over to the first of the year in the following year. They don't do that with with the fall of last year and the first round of this year. So you do get a lot of competitive projects being bid at that same time. So I've seen more people do better in the fall.
Yeah.
Directly
yeah.
because of community crossings.
If that's one thing I've learned, it's spring letting dates, February letting dates, just don't come in with good prices. Again, everybody set up their construction season at that point. So I'm more confident that we'll get better bids at that time. I do think that the project will be awardable at that time. Another thing that gives us a little bit more time is we have to remember that we also have 2 parcels that are still in condemnation. We do not know how those parcels will move forward. I do think that we might be close on settling on one of those parcels. We have a proposal out there to settle, I believe, on one of those. It might be at a little bit of additional cost to the county, but I think in the long run, it'll be worth it on our end, working with our attorneys and our condemnation attorney. The other one, we don't know how that one will go, but it also could go in the way to where it could return funds back to the county that was deposited with the courts. You don't know. So that's that'll give us more time to see how that comes out by moving that letting to the fall also.
So this was the sheet I think Jeff was advising you to kind of look at.
Yep.
Before you make considerations. And as you can see, we did put in the school payments also in it. That was always a discussion of the redevelopment commission. So this one really boils down to this page, in my opinion.
Pretty thin, given the uncertainty we've got with that bridge.
And and I really want you guys to discuss how and for the fire station, I know that's out there, and the Vernal Pike Trail. As you can see, the Vernal Pike Trail has had no movement except for the railroad since 2015. And in 2015, I was working on an estimate of about $600,000 for construction of that. And you can see it's at $2 million. We hope that's an overestimate, but I'm not sure if you guys, if the board wants to move forward with that project. We're ready to go to bid on that project, or if you're wanting to put it out to bid and see where that goes, or if you just want to hold off on that. So I would want to seek the guidance of the board on that also. So as you're discussing, I know the fire department project also, so.
And I guess I would just point out that on this sheet, the 2013 bond, the $186,850, I think it's anticipated that we're going to pay for that out of the bond debt reserve fund, which I do not believe the estimated beginning balance or the TIF revenue has those numbers included. And if we ever get a final number on the Profile Parkway, that could be, she says she doesn't expect it to be very much. I don't know what that means, but that could be another chunk of change that could go towards that $12.5 million or $12 to $14 million project. So there's a few more moving parts that are actually maybe a little more in our favor than the bid.
Yeah,
the bid part.
being the fiscal conservative that I am, I'm gonna say, I
If
still
you can
think
get
that-
some push on the Kreiders, I'd appreciate it. I've tried for a year and a half.
Yep,
Been a long time.
this is, I'm still a little uncertain as to how we wanna go forward with this fire department issue. I think
I think
they
that-
can probably wait if necessary.
I think you reach out to them and say, it's really up in the air until this bid letting occurs, and then I think it will be much clearer at that point in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I was, let's qualify what that amount was.
It's a 55,000.
55,000.
55,000, and then we got a 1.5 million, we got a 12 mil, or 1.9 and a 12 lane.
22.
And just looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint in regards to if Lisa's talking about moving the trail, you know, when to let the trail, and fall lettings work on better costing, do we let that in the fall? And at a $50-some thousand amount for fire protection, on looking at it countywide, while I absolutely love the trails, and I know the state and everybody, we got 9.8 for our connector on Vernal. You know, making sure our fire facilities, irregardless of what district are in, is extremely important, just to cover us from a safety standpoint, public safety. So,
Well, I don't think safety was a particular issue that they had, but they do need the facility does need to get some rehab work done on its parking lot
That's right,
area.
they do.
and, you know, as we state, we don't know the whole thing, but we know from an estimate standpoint, we're at 1.9 on our trail. We've already let the bridge once, and we were not able to award based on those cost aspects. And we're looking at the fall, and.
Yeah, but we may have to use that trail money just to get that Vernal Pike done.
Right, and when I ask on the Vernal Pike, well, it's an important situation, you know, where it goes to Vernal. And,
Yeah, but I'm listening to Lisa. I'm still
Okay.
a couple million short on finding enough money to get all this done.
Why don't, on the Vernal Pike Trail, why don't we just wait and bid that in the fall too?
Greg, does that give us an additional time frame to look if there's any additional assessed value or get that going? Doesn't create us any issues, Lisa, from a standpoint of community promises we've made as a whole, time-wise?
But I guess some specificity, Lisa. I had them spent in 2024. So would that be a fall 2023 let or a fall 2024 let?
Are you talking for which project?
Either.
Either?
Both of them.
So the money for, if the Vernal Pike Connector Road, that would be, Monroe County runs on a calendar year. NDOT runs on a fiscal year. That would be a fiscal year 2024 for NDOT. It would be a 2-year project. So we would be spending our money, if it goes to letting in October of 2024, October 2023.
Yeah.
If it's awarded, Monroe County would get an invoice in November or so, 1st of December, for our 20% of construction. Probably December, so probably around the time of the new budget that takes place for 2024.
Yeah, so it's going to come up. And
It's going to be close.
You're saying the same on the trail?
So yeah, so let me paint this scenario. If we want to do a November letting versus an October letting, we could do a November letting, which doesn't change anything for NDOT. I could request a November letting. If it lets in November and it's awardable, they will bill us in approximately 30 days, which would be December, which would have us paying out of the 2024 budget.
Right, and
Yes.
wouldn't that be the 3 million for the Vernal Pike Connector Road? The balance?
Correct.
Okay, and so at the end of 2023, if we've got 3.6 million in the bank, we've barely got enough to pay in January, February, March, that bill.
Right.
We would be paying we would be getting a bill for whatever that award comes in at, and they award it at that time. We would be billed 20% of that construction
Yeah,
cost.
and the trail isn't an 80-20, right?
The trail is tied to no federal dollars. We could bid that out around the same time. And if we don't have the funds to award that, we don't award it.
So when you say at the same time, that would be fall of 2023, November of 2023.
Correct.
And so if you bid the connector road and it comes in at 15 million in the fall of 2023, and the trail comes in at 1.9, then you could do the 1.9. If the connector road comes in somewhat on budget, or let's say 13 million, then you're not going to be able to do the trail from a cash flow standpoint.
Right, I think that's correct.
Correct.
Everybody with,
Correct.
kind of see where
Yes.
I'm at? So this gets,
And NDOT will determine whether or not the project's awardable. We will not be able to determine if it's awardable.
so Lisa, if you remember, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, we did a monthly cash flow. It's almost, again, a 24-month cash flow that we need to do, because I think we're gonna be cash flow, we're gonna be close,
Yeah.
It's going to be close.
real
Yeah.
close.
Well, the question I would have in regards to it, from a trail standpoint, in regards to the bridge and the road is tied specifically to NDOT from an awardable standpoint, correct? On the bridge, or on the
What's your
crossover
what's your
on Sun-
question?
On Sunrise.
I think his question is on the Vernal Pike Connector Road, that NDOT would determine whether it was awardable or not.
It
That
does,
would be-
because it has to be a certain percentage within the engineer's estimate.
On that. And the Vernal Pike Trail is specifically a locally funded project.
Yes.
Correct. That is based on, we have an engineer, we have a design firm, we have an engineer estimate on that, and that'll be whether or not we can award it, whether we choose to award it or not.
And from a budgetary standpoint, what we're looking at from a '24 standpoint is a couple of months to go into the '25 budget. Is that a correct?
24 budget.
I understand, we're in '24 budget now, based on what
No.
our projections are. But if that trail either did not let or get awarded, or let November, December, it would be in a '25 budget? What I'm trying to identify on that is, we're at a $1.9 million for a trail.
And we're assuming it's spent in '24.
Right.
So it's basically, awarded in November, let's say of '23. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm asking and trying to identify here is, from our trail standpoint, if we've made a community commitment to the public that this trail will be done in '24, if it's a question of trail on a local basis, the Vernal Pike Connector Road is based upon where the bids come in and if NDOT makes it awardable. And then the third point that we're looking at, or I'm trying to identify, is a $50-some thousand amount to the fire station, that when we had talked about approving it based on our financial condition, and my understanding was they wanted to try to get that facility improvement done sometime in the spring of '23. So we're at a $50,000 delta on, $15-17 million worth of work here, and we're worried about paying $53,000 on a 2 to 3 month basis. So,
Yeah, and
I love trails, and I know they promised the road, and we don't want to lose those federal funds, but.
and let me just throw this out there too, Randy, and I'm not here to speak for the board, and I'm not a board member, but I know I throw these big numbers out there, and I try and spend a lot of the money for the board. But if we are trying to save money on this project, like I said, we just sat and met with the board, with our consultant, to bring the cost down. So if there is anything that I can do to bring down the cost of this project to be able to give that fire station $53,000, I will do it. to not hold back to give the fire station some improvements that they need. Because in the long haul, these projects, that $53,000 is not going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things in this $17 million project. Whether it comes through changing an MSE wall that's priced at $2 million, I'm not going to see that in the final numbers of this project when it comes to October. I just don't want one of these projects or a $2 million trail to hold up a $55,000 improvement at a fire station. And I feel like they've been very patient in watching me throw out these numbers of projects. So yeah, I see what you're saying, Randy, and I really appreciate it. And it's hard to say what's going to happen, and if it's not awardable, I don't want a fire station to be put on hold. And then we're here looking at it a year from now, and still we don't know what the future holds with these projects. So.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you do, Lisa. You work really hard at it, and you do a great job. Just have to ask those questions timing-wise, because it's the timing issue that, you know.
I completely understand.
Yeah. And I think that the key we determined is Lisa, it's probably best to bid those two at the same time.
Yep,
Because one could sink the other.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree at 100%, because we were looking at, with the fire station, we were looking at, I think even when this came up, this was before February 15th.
Right.
So now, those plans have been imploded, we have to move forward. I don't think we can do anything. I agree with that until we let both in the fall. I mean,
It's just how it is.
it's how it is,
Financially.
and that's, that's fine. But we've got to get the connector, that's the priority. And I think that when you look at between the trail and the improvements at the fire station, you have to go with the fire station improvements.
That's right.
The trail is the amenity, it's great, but you can't walk away from the fire station. We wouldn't, but it's got to be right in there. So we just have to wait.
Yeah. And
On
that'll
the
all
big one.
come down to you finishing up Profile Parkway, knowing what the numbers are, and moving that forward.
Yeah.
And then a fall letting. So if we're having discussion, Richard, when you said being fiscally conservative in regards to it, we need to let the fire station know that we will have a firm financial answer for them in the fall of '23.
I think we'll know before that.
Okay. So,
We
We're
don't,
giving
we
them some
can't,
time.
we don't know right now today because we don't know how much we're gonna have to give up to get that bridge done.
Right.
Right.
And as soon as we know that, then we can do everything else.
okay. And that'll be sometime October, November?
Yeah. Yeah, we'd hope so.
Lisa?
I do,
I mean, I think we'll have an updated engineer's estimate, or we won't know what the bids will come in until fall, so.
Okay.
But I think there are some things that we can do in the meantime. I want to, we can, and I know that Lisa's been doing this for 2 years. We can get Kreider to give us that final number.
yes,
We'll get that.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
We'll get
right. We need the final number from Kreider, right? We need the negotiations on the bridge and what's going on there.
Right.
We need to verify whether or not there is enough money in the existing 2013 fund balance to pay it off without a $186,000 TIF income for the current year. It's got $190,000 in there, which should be enough to pay it off without having to put any more money in there. So we don't have this $186,000 for the 23 bonds over here. So that gives us another $186,000 to work with.
Yeah.
so
So we got more than enough.
I think we have 250,000, 249,721.48 in the.
Total fund.
In the total, if you look at the,
Right, so there's plenty of money there to pay it off, and some extra.
yeah.
So we can pull money from that. We can get Kreider to finish it up, so we can take that excess. We just need to get these things done.
And then to get
put them
another-
on a piece of paper.
And get another one of these
Get
with,
another one of these that's got that data on it. We can say, oh, yes, there we go. There's plenty of money, we can do this.
Hopefully in your next meeting or two, we'd have it.
yeah.
We have that realistic.
Yeah,
format.
good luck with that.
That works.
Yes, that would,
Now,
And then we can tell Lisa, that's all you get.
All right, now, and don't forget, whoever's gonna call Jeff Kreider, Hart Strait was done in 2020, and we're still waiting for that final pay.
Oh, Hart Strait, which one's, is that, which bond's
yeah,
that?
that was well.
That's the other bond, that's the other bond.
Right,
Well, that should
there are a
be
couple of
done.
things
Isn't
out
that
there with
done?
projects that are kind of hanging out where
Yeah,
there's
that
money.
we can't
And we
keep
haven't,
doing this.
we need to get the final bill.
yes.
That's right.
That's Kreider also.
I'm in favor of sending out letters that says,
Well-
if you don't send us a bill, then we're going to assume that we don't owe you anything, we're going to close that account.
I hope he's on here listening.
He's not. I sent him a text too. And like I said, Katie Stein, she has pushed him for Hart Strait. And DLZ, who was our construction inspector for Profile Parkway. I'm not sure what else to do. So,
Yep,
Send me his number and I'll talk with the fire chief and we'll both give him a call.
right.
There you go, that's an idea.
I mean, I didn't even know if there was anything to hold, I mean, you don't want to hold him up on the North Park project, but is there any leverage you can use on that?
We'll make sure that Mr. Kreider gets a copy of our discussion here and try to move that forward
Yes.
in regards to, you know, we need the bill so we can close
I
things
don't
out.
think it's
so we
Steve
have
that's the
good
holdup
projects.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate
We
your
need a bill.
diligence on that.
You guys could pull a little bit more weight than I can.
Right,
I don't know.
okay.
So any other questions?
I think we
You're
have
gonna prepare-
beaten this one to death.
Yeah, who's preparing the financials to make sure in the next month or two? Is that your?
So we'll update that sheet once, we'll coordinate with Jeff.
Okay.
Yep,
And we'll get you an updated sheet either for your next meeting or the next meeting after that.
Okay.
Or if you're meeting monthly nowadays.
yep.
And so and if nothing else, in your next meeting, Jeff will have an update.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
good.
Thank you,
And
Lisa.
I will talk with the fire chief. I think I'm meeting with him soon anyway
Yeah.
to.
Telling that we are cautiously optimistic.
There you go.
Yes.
But fiscally conservative. I'm
Yes,
sure with-
we are prudent.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
If nothing else, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Minutes. We received minutes in the mail. I have been through them. They looked correct, as far as I
Yeah,
could tell.
I
Did
looked at
anybody
them.
have any corrections or additions?
I don't have any. I move for approval of the minutes for February 15th.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the meeting of February 15th. All in favor,
Aye.
please say aye. We don't have anybody virtually, so we can do a voice vote. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We have no claims for this time. Okay. Staff comment. Lisa, have you said everything you need to say?
I have.
Okay. Jeff, anything from you?
I think that the only thing I'd want to remind everyone is that last fall, we talked about having a meeting close to the North Park, or the State Road 46 corridor, TIF area.
Yes.
And so I think we need to plan that. It sounds like maybe not next month because we want to deal with these financial issues, but maybe the May meeting, I'm meeting
Sure,
with
we
the-
could have it at the fire station and tell them they get money.
Well, the fire chief has offered his space, and I'm meeting with him, so I'm going to try to work out those details
Yep.
with him.
So, financials.
So,
If you do the May, I may not be here, but I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I haven't heard that for sure.
well, I will talk to him about May, and if he can't do it, once you get into
Yeah.
June and
The
July.
other question I have is that I was on a board several years ago, that can we take action off-site? There's some organizations that can't, like the city council and so on.
I think this group can, and I
Okay.
think it
That's
has
what I would
before.
like.
We've
Need to
added
check
the
it.
Ivy Techs.
Right.
Okay.
I just think we have to notice that we are changing our venue for the
Right.
meeting.
Yes.
Well, I just want to put it on the table because
Yep.
I know that can happen if we make some important
Because
decisions.
you don't want it to be rescinded.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might get back from
Is
it.
that it,
I don't
Jeff?
know.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner's comment. Iris, anything from you?
No, but this, I think it's exciting. We're moving along. I'm getting there, so.
Randy, anything from you?
No, appreciate the discussion, Greg, thank you. Lisa, appreciate it.
Same here, great discussion, thank you.
Yep.
Great stuff.
And I'm good and looking forward to finding out more about our financial position. That's the thing that I think is most important for us to
That's right.
understand it well so we can carry forward with these projects that we've been,
And I think the
Trying to get
important point is, it's not a deterioration of the financial position, it's a utilization of the funds that gets us really, really close.
Right.
That's the important point.
yep,
And keep in mind, that we still have to, make our debt payments.
yep.
And I think that when we look at this, and Greg, when we look at it, we may want to break out 2024 into when we expect to receive the spring and fall settlement.
That's a good idea.
I'm still thinking, I'm thinking a 24-month cash flow. We're back to what we did 5 or
Or
6
at least
years.
quarterly.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
When I was looking at that, that was one of the concerns I want to make sure we look at is, well, yeah, we're going to get $2 million in, or whatever, the 2.2 million in 2024, but half of that won't come in until November.
Right.
Right.
And so,
Assuming
I
it
like
gets
the quarter.
distributed when it's supposed to be distributed.
All right.
Yeah, and everybody pays on time.
Right.
yeah.
So, so I like the quarterly concept, that's what I'll strive to do.
Okay, all right. All right, anything else? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Stand up and leave.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.